Okay, AI, what do we do with all the wastewater from fracking? How artificial intelligence has entered the Texas oil patch and what that means today on The Standard.
Texas Standard is a production of KUT Austin, KERA North Texas, Houston Public Media, and Texas Public Radio in San Antonio.
I'm David Brown. Texas-based oil drillers looking for a competitive advantage. They're turning to AI, but what are the implications? Turns out regulators don't really know. We'll hear more. As the nation turns to honor members of the military who gave their all while serving, what of those service members who died years later after exposure to chemicals while in uniform? Also, the week in politics, plus a rising star in Dallas, our conversation with a frontman of Cure for Paranoia. All that and a whole lot more coming up today on the Texas Standard. No matter where you are, it's Texas Standard Time on this 22nd day of May, 2026. I'm David Brown. Now, I'm going to say two words. You tell me what you think it is, okay? Produced water. That name itself seems crafted not to alarm anyone, doesn't it? But let's just call it what it is. It's contaminated wastewater brought up from deep underground during oil production and fracking. Water so loaded with salt, chemicals, and contaminants that getting rid of it has become one of the biggest environmental and logistical problems facing the Texas oil industry. And in West Texas, there's now more of it than ever before. For every barrel of oil coming out of the Permian Basin, companies can bring up 3, sometimes 10 barrels of this waste fluid. For years, the solution was simple: pump it back underground. But that strategy's been blamed for earthquakes, tougher state regulations, and growing concern that the industry may literally be running out of places to put the stuff. So now comes the next frontier: artificial intelligence. The same technology stirring anxiety over deepfakes, job losses, surveillance, and who controls the future of information is now being deployed to help oil companies manage billions of barrels of toxic wastewater beneath Texas soil. Now, the pitch from industry is that AI can analyze geology faster, predict risks better, streamline permits, maybe even help prevent dangerous mistakes. Critics and watchdogs, however, hear something else: a hugely consequential experiment happening largely out of public view, with regulators themselves acknowledging they don't fully know how companies are using the technology. And when the stakes involve earthquakes, groundwater, public safety, and the future of energy production in Texas, well, the words "trust us" may not quite cut it. The Texas Tribune's West Texas reporter Carlos Nogueras Ramos has been digging into this story. Carlos, welcome to the Texas Standard.
Thank you for having me.
As it's been explained to me, this toxic slush is a byproduct of the fracking process. And once you extract that oil, you're left with a lot of basically garbage water, toxic water that you got to do something with. And what the industry has been doing is re-injecting that toxic slush into the ground. But now you're running out of space. You have a place to put this toxic waste. And so this is where AI apparently is being used by the industry. What is it? They're asking AI to help them come up with a solution, find places to re-inject this toxic slush?
Yeah. Think about it this way. Multiple companies operate in the Permian Basin because it's the most productive oil field, Texas, and arguably in America.
Right.
But that just means that more people will have to grapple with produced water. And so as a company, the way I try to understand it is that you want to also make sure that you are coming up with a plan or a backstop that won't disrupt your operations. And so what AI does here is analyze multiple formations within a 2-mile radius underground that tell you all sorts of information about the geology. So whether there's any connection to seismic activity, which is a sticking point in the Permian Basin, any proximity to groundwater, or are there any active wells, any actively oil and gas producing wells nearby? And so that way, companies can just get to those saltwater disposal wells much faster.
I see. But, well, this sounds like a fix, not a problem. Why is this controversial?
AI in and of itself, I think, is an emerging technology that we're still just trying to understand, particularly, the role it plays in oil field operations. And so I think it just brings up questions about how effective it can be in sort of assessing the underground formations that are so vulnerable because of seismic activity, because of the underlying groundwater. And so I think we are just beginning to understand the impact that AI could have on produced water, which is possibly the oil and gas industry's biggest dilemma right now, because oil and gas activity is at an all-time high.
So just the same way that we have to be careful of hallucinations with AI, for all we know, the suggestions, the recommendations being made to the industry may or may not be valid and may create some issues that we're not entirely aware of. What about the state agency that regulates the oil and gas industry, the Railroad Commission? What do they have to say about all this?
Yeah, that's a good point. And also, yes, the Texas Railroad Commission, the agency that regulates oil and gas in Texas, reaching out to them, they said that they are not aware of any AI use. So this isn't something that's being regulated or monitored by Texas. It's privately implemented by companies that think it could be effective. And industry analysts and academics say it is, but the fact of the matter is that we just do not have the numbers or the data to substantiate that statement. Or if it exists, it's private.
Yeah, well, that's just it, right? I mean, this is something that energy companies are reluctant to talk about because they see AI as a competitive advantage. They don't want to lose that out to others by revealing it to regulators, I guess.
Yeah, they don't want to give out the recipe. And yeah, I mean, again, companies, this is something that's just becoming more ubiquitous in the oil and gas industry because they want to continue drilling for oil and gas when the price of the crude is good and when there is significant profits to be made from drilling. And produced water stands to disrupt those operations. So, the faster you can implement this, the more crude you can get to.
Yeah, speed versus safety, I guess, is a serious consideration, and it's one that Carlos Nogueras Ramos is tracking. He covers West Texas for the Texas Tribune. We'll have a link to his latest, texasstandard.org. Carlos, thanks so much.
Thank you.
This Monday, Memorial Day, as Americans remember those who died in service, some are also paying tribute to loved ones who died years after they served. They were victims of long-term illnesses linked to chemical exposure in the military. From Fairbanks, Alaska, Shelley Herbert reports now for the American Homefront Project.
On a nippy spring morning at Birch Hill Cemetery in Fairbanks, I'm standing on Benno Cleveland's gravesite, the one he picked out himself.
I purchased the one in between.
So this is you right here.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry I was standing on it.
No, it's all right. I hope they all do a happy dance for me.
Cleveland is a Nupiaq, one of the indigenous peoples of the Arctic. He served in the Vietnam War and received 2 Purple Hearts. Cleveland holds an eagle feather for the strength and courage to speak, he says, about the spot where he plans to spend eternity.
So this is hallowed ground. This is sacred ground.
Cleveland says he chose to be buried between his father, who served in World War II, and his friend, James Akavana, another Vietnam veteran. Cleveland and Akavana were both exposed to Agent Orange during their service. That's an herbicide the U.S. government used to remove dense tree cover during the war. Its effects on human health were not fully understood or publicly acknowledged for many years. Now it's associated with cancer, nerve damage, diabetes, and other long-term illnesses that affect hundreds of thousands of Vietnam veterans, including Cleveland.
I'm going to talk about Agent Orange. The picture is worth 1,000 words.
That's a gallon-sized Ziploc bag full of his medications. His friend Akavana died a couple years ago, officially of COPD, though friends and family say they believe Agent Orange had a role.
There's a saying that says that I was killed in Vietnam, I just haven't died yet. and that pertains to those that have been affected with Agent Orange.
Akavana's widow, Garnet Akavana, says she feels the pain of her husband's death particularly hard on Memorial Day. She remembers her late husband as a kind man with a warm sense of humor, but says things like war films and even the sound of jets overhead would take him straight back to Vietnam.
After he came back, he just got changed. He couldn't watch Pearl Harbor or anything like that because he said, they're coming, and I heard those bombs.
Akavana says life has been hard without him. Between her grief, financial struggles, and trying to navigate the Veterans Affairs system. Their story is hardly rare in Alaska, home to the nation's highest population of veterans per capita. Ann Masker moved to the state with her husband Willard after his service in Vietnam.
His favorite thing was scrambling around the Wrangell Mountains looking for doll sheep. The reason he went was for the peace.
Willard succumbed to Agent Orange-related vascular dementia a few years ago, though Masker says it felt like she lost him years before he died.
The kinds of things that he loved to do, he couldn't do, so he would spend literally hours in his recliner with the clicker, watching TV, watching sports, watching this, watching that, and drifting off.
Masker says this time of year always brings back memories of the life she shared with her husband.
I miss him every day, and Memorial Day will probably magnify that, but I'm so proud of him and who he was and of the many people we knew and people we lost. And Memorial Day is all about respect.
Looking back on his life and service, Benno Cleveland echoes that sentiment. He's preparing a speech for the community's annual Memorial Day ceremony to honor the service members who gave their lives for their country, either in wartime or decades after they served. Reporting in Fairbanks, I'm Shelby Herbert.
That story was produced by the American Homefront Project, a public media collaboration covering American military life and veterans. Well, looking for some good news? Coming up, the latest on Corpus Christi's water crisis and the possibility it's easing. And that screwworm that's threatening Texas ranches and Texas agriculture, there's some indications we're winning the battle, although the war may go on quite a while. Those stories and a whole lot more as the Texas Standard continues. Texas Standard Time Check. We are coming up on 19 minutes past the hour.
Support for Texas Standard comes from Texas Mutual Insurance Company, a workers' compensation provider that's been caring for hardworking Texans for over 30 years. More at texasmutual.com/expert partner. Support for Texas Standard comes from Texas Realtors, providing representation at every stage of the home ownership journey, helping clients understand their options and manage complex transaction details. Info at texasrealestate.com.
It's the Texas Standard. I'm David Brown. It has been a challenging spring for Corpus Christi, Texas. First, cities dealing with a worsening water crisis. And second, this is apparently unrelated to the water crisis. Several members of City Council have been trying to remove the mayor, Paulette Guajardo. This week there was movement on both fronts, an update on the water crisis, and a court hearing in the mayor's legal fight to stay on as the city's top elected official. KEDT's Rob Boskamp gets us up to speed.
Procedural discussions for the mayor's pretrial hearing were held in executive session. During that time, the council appointed former Nueces County Judge Terry Shamsi as special counsel. Council members also voted to schedule additional pretrial hearings for May 27th and June 2nd.
Truth fears no investigation, and they don't fight and sue your peers, and you don't fight to not be deposed again unless you have something to hide. So far, there's 2,489 votes on my petition to remove the mayor.
That was Rachel Caballero during public comment. She filed the petition requesting the mayor be removed from office. The petition, originally signed by 6 residents, stems from a 2024 city council vote on a $2 million taxpayer-funded incentive for a downtown hotel project. Guajardo is accused of misconduct related to being aware of an altered FEMA screenshot in the project developer's presentation. Meanwhile, a window for the city to declare a level 1 water emergency has been moved from September to December. The update follows recent regional rainfall giving area reservoirs some much-needed relief. Lake Texana east of Edna jumped over 20% in capacity over the past month. Lake Corpus Christi was back in double-digit capacity for the first time in weeks. Council members also postponed a vote on proposed changes in the city's drought contingency plan. During the discussion, it was brought up that under the proposed water use plan, apartments would be classified as commercial water users.
Treating them as a commercial unit actually benefits them in terms of looking at historic usage for their facility and understanding their needs.
I just feel that apartments or homes also, I used to live in an apartment, that was my home, and I should be under residential, and I should be able to use 6,000 gallons of water per unit.
That was District 3 Councilman Eric Cantu and Corpus Christi Water Chief Operating Officer Nick Winkleman. The city is expected to meet with the Corpus Christi Apartment Association this week. City Council is set to vote on a final plan in its June 2nd meeting. The Water Department proposes requiring customers to cut water use by 25% during a Level 1 emergency. I'm Rob Boskamp in Corpus Christi.
And you are listening to the Texas Standard. Agriculture officials in Mexico are dealing right now with a horde of flesh-eating parasites. The New World screwworm is a fly whose larvae burrow into the skin of animals like cattle, sheep, and deer, often doing quite serious harm in the process. We should note that screwworm cases have been confirmed less than 100 miles from our southern border. Should they reach Texas, the flies could cause serious economic problems for industries like hunting and ranching, which is why the federal government is spending millions trying to push them back from the border. For more on these efforts, we're joined now by Tracy Tomasic. He is Associate Director for the Texas Farm Bureau, responsible for livestock and animal health. Tracy, welcome to the Texas Standard.
Thank you, sir, and appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Appreciate you doing it. What kind of impact are these screwworms having right now in Mexico and Central America? Could you say more about that?
Yes, unfortunately, they're having a devastating impact on animal health and the productivity of the farms and ranches in those areas. The population of those fertile wild New World screwworm flies has just grown and festered in the central part of Mexico and also Central American countries over the last couple of years. The things they've done in Mexico to help mitigate the increase in those populations have slowed it down, but certainly have not stopped it.
So folks understand what's at stake here in Texas for ranchers, for agriculture. Could you give us a sense of what this means if the screwworm does, in fact, come into Texas?
Yes, the estimates that we project would be well over $8.5 billion from a livestock standpoint, and boots on the ground impact is going to be much more consistent and constant. Evaluation, physically walking up to or being next to your livestock, whether it's sheep, goats, cattle, horses, pigs, and examining those animals for wounds that have been infested with a New World screwworm fly. It's the time and effort that really adds up.
It's my understanding that part of the U.S. strategy to keep them out of Texas and some of the southern states involves dropping screwworms out of airplanes. What's that about?
Yeah, it's actually a decades-old technique and response. Those flies that they're dropping out are sterilized. And the unique thing about this particular species, the screwworm fly, is the females only mate one time in their life cycle. So if they mate with a male that's sterilized, they'll only have unfertilized eggs, and therefore those eggs won't hatch, ultimately breaking the life cycle.
How long are these operations going to go on?
This is a very long-term operation. Right now we're working as fast as possible to increase the production capacity of these sterile flies. And if you think back into the last time that we had a long-term response for New World screwworm in an eradication effort. It was the 50s, 60s, and even the 70s. So we've got what could be a decades-long operation to move these flies from the Texas border all the way back down to Panama with the Darien Gap.
Tracy, is it reasonable to assume that at some point screwworms are going to reach the U.S. border, that it's just inevitable, or is this something that can actually be prevented altogether, in your opinion?
I think that we're on the cusp of turning this thing or this population back. Really? And and when I say on the cusp, we have to think about the timeline that we've endured. A year ago, all the models said that we would have screwworm flies in Texas. But the work with our federal partners and then the Mexican government and the Mexican ranchers has prolonged that and given us time to start the construction of another sterile fly facility in Texas to improve and enhance our distribution techniques of those sterile flies, and ultimately make the modeling better of where we anticipate those flies to move next and at a much slower rate. So yes, we are prepared for an infestation to occur in Texas, but I think, and have a proven track record of delaying that, and we've done extremely well with the strategy that's in place so far. So I think the takeaway here is that when we do get one in Texas, we are prepared to respond quickly, and we will be able to severely limit the movement of those flies once they get into the United States in a way we haven't seen before.
Sounds like very encouraging news indeed. If you want more information on these screwworms, we have plenty of links over at texasstandard.org, and we've been speaking with Tracy Tomasic, Associate Director at the Texas Farm Bureau. Good to hear, Tracy. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Support for Texas Standard comes from the online UT High School, offering a full-time diploma program for remote, asynchronous learners throughout Texas. More at highschool.utexas.edu/tuition-free.
From the Texas Newsroom, I'm Matt Harrop. Hurricane season starts in 10 days, and forecasters with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration have released their latest projections. Our Kyle McClanagan reports.
Hurricane season officially begins June 1st, and NOAA is predicting 8 to 14 named storms in the Atlantic this season. Of those, NOAA is forecasting 3 to 6 hurricanes and 1 to 3 major hurricanes, meaning a Category 3 to 5 storm with winds at or above 111 miles per hour. NOAA Administrator Neil Jacobs announced the predictions Thursday and says a below-average prediction does not guarantee a hurricane-free season.
It's very important to understand that it only takes one. We have had Category 5s make landfall in the past during below-average seasons.
Jacobs says El Niño is the main driver behind the below-average Atlantic forecast, but says it will likely have the opposite effect on the central and eastern Pacific. I'm Kyle McClanagan in Houston.
A new study on rain events in Texas could help reduce urban flood risks and improve planning for extreme weather. The Texas A&M Urban Flood Study found that cities can actually change the weather depending on the type of weather event. Researchers looked at individual storm events in DFW, Austin, Houston, and San Antonio and found that cityscapes could make some storms more intense. John Nielsen Gammon is a Texas A&M University atmospheric scientist and a co-author of the study.
Cities are typically warmer. We call this the urban heat island. And so that could potentially lead to greater instability for convection over cities than over the surrounding countryside.
The study also found that urban areas can actually lessen the intensity of cool fronts as they pass through. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton is suing Meta and WhatsApp. As the Texas Newsroom's Lucio Vasquez reports, he's accusing the companies of misleading users about how private their messages really are.
Paxton's lawsuit says Meta and WhatsApp can access user messages. That's despite the companies claiming messages were protected by end-to-end encryption, meaning only the sender and recipient could read them. And according to Bloomberg, a federal investigator found there was, quote, no limit to the type of WhatsApp messages Meta could access. While the company has denied those allegations, Paxton is seeking a court order to block Meta from making what he calls deceptive privacy claims. I'm Lucio Vasquez in Houston.
And SpaceX will again try to launch from South Texas today. The launch of the Starship V3 rocket was scrubbed yesterday with seconds to go due to technical issues with fuel temperature and pressure readings. The next launch window opens around 5:30 this afternoon. I'm Matt Harrop in the Texas Newsroom.
Support for these Texas headlines comes from University Extension at UT Austin, offering open enrollment to a wide variety of UT's undergraduate credit courses that can be taken by anyone from anywhere. More at extension.utexas.edu.
You got to tune to the Texas Standard. I'm David Brown. Is there a cure for paranoia? Doctors say there are plenty of effective treatment options, if that's what you're looking for. On the other hand, if you're looking for the Dallas-based hip-hop collective that goes by that name, you've definitely come to the right place. Public radio's been embracing the music of Cure for Paranoia in a very big way. NPR's Tiny Desk Concert Series recently held a modern contest for musical discovery, and Cure for Paranoia came out on top with a rap sound that echoes with influences like Outkast, The Roots, Odd Future, A Tribe Called Quest, among others. And to say this attention has been life-altering for songwriter and frontman Cameron McLeod just might be an understatement. Then again, let's just ask him directly. Cameron McLeod, welcome to the Texas Standard.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
You know, this news of your win came out just last week. I gotta think your life must have changed big time. Has it?
I think my life more so changed whenever I got done posting a verse every single day. This time last year, I was at like less than 30,000 followers or something like that.
Yeah.
And in the time of me posting a verse every single day, we've gained over like 450,000.
450,000 followers? Is that?
Yeah. So we haven't exactly gotten that number from Tiny Desk yet, but I mean, we also haven't gone on tour yet. So,
hey, tell us a little bit about what it means to be a collective, because that means different things in different groups and that sort of thing. You're the main songwriter and the front person, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think in our particular case, it really means family, because I mean, we really are a family band that kind of merged together.
How many different performers?
I mean, at the most, it'll be 14 or 15 of us.
Wow, 14 or 15 of you on stage. How do you split a check at the end of the night on that one?
Oh, my God, today. Don't even get me started on that.
Are you getting used to these interviews and having to answer the same questions over and over? Because people far from Dallas are now picking up on you.
You know, you're actually asking some pretty good ones. This might be the best kind of questions that I've gotten asked. I had an interview. I mean, hopefully he doesn't hear this, but genuinely the worst interview I've ever done in my entire life. God, it was horrible.
But with a name like yours, I mean, Cure for Paranoia. Where does that come from, by the way? What's the backstory there?
The short of it is that 10 or so years ago, I got placed on medication for bipolar depression and paranoid schizophrenia. And wasn't diagnosed those things, but I mean, I'm on meds for it. So I shortly after realized that creating music was way more therapeutic than the meds was.
Oh, that's brilliant.
And I wanted to make music that was therapy for everybody else, as well as it was for myself, because music was the cure for paranoia for me. And I think you asked earlier what the cure was, and I do genuinely feel like it's just showing up completely and authentically as yourself.
Living in the moment.
Yeah. And living in your truth.
What does that mean for you, living in your truth, musically speaking?
I think growing up, I always thought that I needed to be successful enough to be myself. And now I'm to a point where everything that I thought was wrong with me is why I'm about to go on tour.
What did you think was wrong with you, man?
I mean, I think just the stigma with hip hop is that, you have to have all your stuff together, especially when I was coming up. There was no such thing as mental illness. There was no such thing as...
well, people didn't talk about it. It was everywhere, but nobody talked about it.
Exactly. And there was a stigma behind taking medication or going to therapy or stuff like that. And I mean, even on top of that, there wasn't a space for queer artists either. So it was I really did feel all of these things about myself that I had to fundamentally change in order to, get to be a musician.
So you come out from Las Colinas to Dallas, and you just start over. You decide this is where I'm going to plant my flag, and I'm gonna do music the way I want to.
To be honest, I would catch the train from my mom's house into Deep Ellum, downtown Dallas. I would tell her I was looking for jobs, but really I was going looking for gigs.
Wow.
And growing up here in Dallas, you're told that Deep Ellum is the spot. That's where you go if you want to make it as a musician out here. So I would go there and try and get gigs and, kind of get turned away. But they would be like, yeah, just leave us your social media and we'll reach out or whatever. Fast forward to me sneaking backstage and rapping to Erykah Badu and her asking me to play her birthday party.
Dude, that's great.
Yeah. And from that, getting to play like my first show in front of like thousands of people.
Wow.
So needless to say, all of those venues that I had went to reached back out to me. And I was doing like 5 or so different residencies a week.
Good God Almighty, all praise go to the most highly anticipated in Dallas since Erykah hitting in YC.
We're going to take a quick break for our station statewide to reset and come back with more of our conversation with Cameron McLeod, frontman of the Dallas-based hip-hop collective Cure for Paranoia, as the Texas Standard continues. Stay with us. It's the Texas Standard. I'm David Brown. We're talking with Cameron McLeod. He's the songwriter and frontman of the Dallas-based hip-hop collective Cure for Paranoia. The group just won NPR's annual Tiny Desk contest, which will send them on tour across the country and raise their profile significantly. Cameron, I mentioned earlier how your music has echoes of Outkast and The Roots. Was that the kind of music you were into? What were you listening to growing up?
I mean, I think my biggest musical inspiration growing up was Lauryn Hill.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially Unplugged 2.0, which doesn't get really the recognition I think it deserves, but it really did completely change the way I presented myself as a musician because she's just so authentically herself in that project and being open about like her mental health and her dealings with the industry. And I really wanted to be that same type of artist.
What's cool to me about the way that you are using music here is that, often music is sort of a one-way street in the sense that if you're up on stage, you're performing and, the audience is taking it in. But here, in a way, this is part of your healing, right? When the audience is there reacting to what you're doing, they become part of your story.
Yeah, 100%. And on top of that, like being inspired by artists that make me want to be myself and not like them because they're so themselves. I think that's what people kind of get whenever they come to my shows. It doesn't necessarily make them want to be me, but it, inspires them to want to pursue what it is they're after.
Yeah. It's interesting. When I asked you if your life had changed, what you responded with, I was a little surprised by because you defined that as followers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that what it's all about, amassing followers?
I don't think so, but I mean, it is a literal physical representation of the change, especially in this day and age. I think the main way that my life changed, especially last year, was like, I really learned to trust myself. And I think Tiny Desk had made me really kind of like hide behind the band in a sense. And think that the only way that I was going to make it was if I was like with a band. The following is one thing, but it's another thing whenever I gained the following from literally just setting up my phone on a stack of books and rapping to it. Like it was literally just me on camera. So it really gave me a newfound trust in myself and what I was capable of doing.
I was going to say that does speak a lot for your talent because how many young people you imagine set up their phone, feeling the way that you probably did once upon a time, right? And they try to rap and they put it out there and they hope that people notice.
Yeah, I think for me, what was different is that I didn't care so much if people noticed. I cared if I became a better musician, and it was literally like therapy for me. All of these verses, I'm like talking about, just really personal stuff. And people get to, when you're doing something every day on a public platform like that, it's people are really getting to delve into like a diary almost.
Yeah.
I dealt with so much last year. I dealt with, loss and grief and just self-discovery, all of these things.
What, people passing away around you or something? Or what do you mean loss?
Well, halfway through the year last year, on day 183, my mom had reached out to me and congratulated me on being halfway through the year. And she was like the main one, kind of just telling me like, I'm so proud of your dedication. And you said you were going to do something, you do it.
Mm-hmm. And this is posting what, a verse every day?
A verse but even just deeper than that, just like she's really watched me. Like, I used to sell my CDs at malls to get my name out there. I just really I made a commitment to myself that it was like, I'm either going to be famous or I'm going to be homeless. Like, I'm either going to do music or I'm not, but I just put everything into it. But long story short, she ended up having like a minor heart attack the same day that she texted me that.
Dude, wow.
Is
she all right now? Or?
Well, no. She passed a couple days later in her sleep.
Sorry.
It's totally fine. Not your fault. But the main thing is that whenever I was at the hospital with her the whole time, the whole thing she kept saying was, did you do your verse? Make sure you did your verse. And I think it was really her pushing me to finish the daily series, because, I mean, I had every reason to stop. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I would have had every right to quit, but I knew that would have made her like so sad if like that was the reason why. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm, I do.
And the following, how it like jumped up like crazy, it all happened because I kept going. Mm-hmm. Which is why I say like the following is not everything, but it is a literal physical manifestation of like what happens when you keep going, especially when you have a reason not to.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry to hear about your mom and what a loss that must have been. But at the same time, wow, the fact that you felt like this was something you need. She gave you something there.
Yeah, 100%. And I also know, I think I would be crazy not to think that all of these like blessings that are coming in aren't because of her. You know what I mean? She's got something to do with it, because it's too crazy.
Do you think Dallas makes you sound a certain way, or could you do what you're doing anywhere?
I think I could. I know for a fact I could do what I do anywhere. I mean, a lot of people that even come up to us at our shows, the first thing they ask me, they're like, "Are you from Chicago? Are you from?"
Oh, really?
Like, yeah, and not to dog my own city, but it is the highest of compliments when people don't assume that I'm from Texas.
Why is that? Say more about that.
I mean, Texas is just Texas. It's a big part of why I was so afraid of being myself growing up, because it's just like, yeah, we're not as we tend to not be as open-minded as other places.
Yeah, there's that for sure, but there's Erykah Badu who's is from Dallas.
But I mean, Erykah Badu only got popular after she went to Brooklyn.
Well, there's that for sure, but her name is associated with Dallas, and now people are going to associate Cameron McLeod with Dallas.
100%.
Yeah?
But not to seem so jaded, but it's like Texas tends to not really support its own artists until someone else does.
But you could change a lot of stuff now, because this is a kind of a break of a lifetime, some people would say.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I would love to be able to kind of change the way people view Dallas and, what we do out here. I think those are going to be some big shoes to fill, especially when you compare it to how Badu is the face of this place.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think needs to change in Texas or in Dallas to make it more hip-hop friendly? I mean, a different style of hip-hop obviously is associated with Houston big time. Right?
Yeah, I think it's more so about just embracing individuality and embracing authenticity. Mm-hmm. Like, we don't all have to sound like things that have already made it.
Right. Cameron McLeod is the songwriter and frontman for Cure for Paranoia, the Dallas-based hip-hop collective that just won NPR's Tiny Desk contest. Cameron, huge congratulations to you. Really
Thank
nice,
you so
really
much,
nice
man.
to get to say hello, and we're all rooting for you as this new tour and all the success comes rolling in.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you, man.
Support for Texas Standard comes from Half Price Books, a Texas-bred new and used bookstore, proudly supporting public media and sustainability by keeping books, music, and other media in circulation. Store locations and more information at hpb.com.
This is Liz Garten Scanlon with Typewriter Rodeo. We type poems on vintage typewriters on whatever strikes your fancy. Empty nesting. When baby birds leave the nest, they leave for good. Their parents bringing them takeout for a few days while they learn to forage and find their wings. Our babies come back and back, bringing their own twigs and fluff, stories of people we've never met, in voices familiar but changed in ways we can't identify. Our nests crowd and crumble a bit under the weight of everyone's feelings and efforts, and just everyone's big, full-grown bodies, more like planets now than hatchlings. And still we make space, we make food, we sing lullabies and hold them to our breasts till they go winging off again. This is Liz Garten Scanlon with Typewriter Rodeo, and you're listening to the Texas Standard.
You can hear the Typewriter Rodeo every Friday here on the Standard. Got a suggestion for a custom poem? Well, you know what to do. Send it over. You just might hear it on the radio. But now it's time for the week that was in Texas politics. Jasper Scherer is politics editor for the Texas Tribune. Jasper, welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
Well, some big news this week out of Corpus Christi. It would appear that they may have got a break on their looming water crisis. They've been worried that water resources are so low they'll have to declare a water emergency by September, and that would mean a pretty huge crackdown on everyday water use. So what's changed?
Well, so what's changed is that threshold for an emergency was pushed back to December. So, and the emergency basically means, that's the point when water demand is 6 months out from exceeding supply. So that basically pushes that point back, that ETA, from March to June 2027. So just a little bit more of a respite, but still a major crisis of pretty epic proportions for Corpus.
Yeah. I want to shift gears and take a look at some more immediate political news. I'll just read the headline for this and we can unpack it. Trump endorses Ken Paxton in Senate GOP runoff. Big news indeed. In fact, it was a national story. What did you make of this news when it came out earlier this week?
Well, one thing I made of it was that I was just surprised that it came at all, just given how long Trump had been teasing it and sort of pushing it off like a reporter telling his editor he's about to file that story. But no, it's, I think Trump was mentioning how Cornyn was, not nearly as loyal to him as Paxton has been, and that, just kind of underscores that Trump demands, full loyalty from the folks that he endorses, and that could be some of Cornyn's past doubts that he's cast about Trump and his electability are kind of coming back to bite him down the home stretch here.
Yeah, but Cornyn's been in that position for 17 years or something. It's been a long time. He's been in office as U.S. Senator from Texas. I'm wondering how dispositive this endorsement is.
There are some folks who are treating it as kind of the death blow for him, and I think there's some justification for that, just given that the polls, by all accounts, we're seeing it. The race was either tied or close to tied. This could be sort of the straw that breaks the camel's back. But at the same time, Cornyn's not thrown in the towel or canceling his campaign. So he's running through the finish line just to see if, maybe there are just enough GOP voters out there who aren't hanging on Trump's every word about who they should support. So still should be an interesting election night.
Yeah, quick reminder that today is the last day for early voting in the primary runoffs, and you can get up to speed on all that matters over at texastribune.org. That's where Jasper Scherer is politics editor. Jasper, have a great weekend. Stay dry.
You too, David. Thanks.
And you are listening to the Texas Standard.
Texas voters are headed back to the polls. I'm Wells Dunbar with the Texas Standard, and chances are, if you're listening, early voting ends today, Friday, in this year's primary runoff elections, the lowest of the low turnout contests that decide who will ultimately hold power in Texas politics. We asked Texans what's motivating them to vote this time around.
That Donald Trump has thrown his support behind Ken Paxton is shocking, but not surprising.
Carol Hawkins is referring to the high-profile Republican Senate showdown between Attorney General Ken Paxton and incumbent Senator John Cornyn, a race that's largely sucked the oxygen out of the runoff, along with Trump's 11th-hour decision after early voting had already begun to throw his support behind the Attorney General. Hawkins says this election feels different.
This voter who voted Republican more than Democrat over the years is disgusted.
But across Texas, there are also heated runoff races for Congress, the legislature, and local offices. Contests divided sharply along party lines and likely to shape the tone of November's elections. Runoff elections in Texas typically draw far fewer voters than November, but that can mean a relatively small number of people end up having an outsized influence over who advances. Basically, whoever can swing by a Randall's in late May, cast a ballot, and still make it home with a rotisserie chicken, that's the person helping chart the course of Texas politics.
This is Jess Monroe from Fredericksburg, Texas. I went and voted in the Democratic runoff election today because it's more important than ever to participate in our democratic process with our democracy under attack.
And some Texans are trying to keep the focus less on party and more on participation itself. I shared this quote earlier in the week, and it bears repeating. Tyler Malloy wrote to us, "Both parties have candidates that are in runoff elections. Your voice matters. Quality Texans vote in every election." Election Day is Tuesday, May 26th, and the midterms fall on November 3rd. Quality Texans do vote in every election, but that's not the full extent of their duties. What else do they do? Well, you've got until November to figure that out. I'm Wells Dunbar, and this is The Talk of Texas.
Wells Dunbar, monitoring the talk of Texas. I think earlier I mentioned John Cornyn's been in office for a long time, not 17 years, more like 23 years. But whether he'll be able to run for a fifth term, well, he's facing a serious challenge from Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, as you likely know. On Tuesday, step 2, the primary runoffs. Ready or not, we'll get you up to speed on what you need to know if you haven't voted early and get caught up on what else is making news in the Lone Star State. That's all coming up on the Memorial Day edition of the Texas Standard. We certainly do hope you can join us. Till then, I'm David Brown, along with the rest of the Texas Standard team, wishing you a wonderful weekend.
Philanthropic support for Texas Standard comes from Casey and Scott O'Hare, the Winkler Family Foundation, Lynn Dobson and Greg Woldridge, Adrian Killam, and the George Huntington family. Would your company or organization like to be a sponsor as well? Contact your local station for opportunities within your community. For statewide sponsorships, visit TexasPublicMediaNetwork.com.